Right, change and disruption is a pretty big subject to cover. So I'm going to concentrate on one area which forms the foundation of adapting to change, and that is motivation. With the right motivation mindset, you can then cope with any change. So 18 years ago, two trains just outside of Paddington collided at over 130 miles per hour. A fireball erupted and came through the main carriage that I was on. Sadly, 31 people died that day. And from the injuries I sustained, I should have been 32nd. But for whatever reason, luckily, I survived. I lost everything in that train crash. In those few minutes, my whole life was torn to shreds. Before this crash, I was considered a successful businesswoman. I had my own company. I had my own projected businesses. I was earning a high net worth income. And yes, I was going on my fancy holidays every single year to far-flung places, changing my car every single year to the latest model. And back then, my motivation was very much money. That was what I wanted. And then, of course, this happens. And I ended up in a 3-week coma after this. And when I woke, I realised that my whole world had changed. I'd lost my company. I was too ill to work. I'd lost my marriage. And unfortunately, I'd lost my health. I now have permanent disabilities from after the train crash. And I also suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So I thought to myself, lying in my hospital bed, okay, you're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to evolve. And you better do it pretty damn quickly if you want to survive and move on into a future. And that's really where I started thinking about motivation. That money motivation, the want to make profit and money, I think is indicative for 90% of us. But I realised it wasn't going to stand me in good stead. I couldn't tackle what I was facing then, which was effectively starting from scratch, with nothing. And money wasn't going to help me. So I then had to think, okay, I'm going to have to shift my motivation. My motivation needs to be adapting to change. And that's where I now use what I term the change motivation. With the change motivation, I have been able to rebuild my life, and I'm now considered a success again. But now money is no longer my driving force. So let's get on to what's more relevant to you. What do I mean by this different type of motivation? And the first foundation to adapting to change is understanding what your motivation is. Not just personally, but also at work. Understanding, knowledge, as we all know, is the key to most things. And understanding what the motivation is your beginning steps. When human beings first appeared on this earth all that millennia ago, we were hunter-gatherers. We didn't have to stop and think, what is our motivation? Our motivation was quite simply survival. We needed to hunt and kill what we needed to eat in order to live. Then, 12,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution starts. And that's when, rather than being hunter-gatherers, we settle down and start farming. And we cultivate the basics that we need to live. But again, survival is what motivates us. That's all that we're worried about. Jump forward to only 500 years ago, scientific revolution. That's when we get to grips with the laws of physics and chemistry and biology. And while we were doing that, we began exploring our world. We travelled to new countries. and we learnt how to exploit them. And this is actually where capitalism starts 500 years ago. That was when our motivation shifted. We no longer just thought about survival, we now started thinking about money and possessions. And that began to equal success to us. And that's what I term the reward motivation. It's what drives 99% of people. Then jump forward to the Industrial Revolution. That was 200 years ago. The Industrial Revolution mechanised our tools, which made our tasks easier. But it's still the reward motivation that's driving us, that need to make money and profit. 1968, this is the time of the computer revolution. That's when we start using these things to digitise ourselves. But guess what our motivation still is? The reward motivation, the money and the profit. This is 1990, we enter the internet age, the World Wide Web. With this new technology, we mould it to help our lives become easier so that we can earn yet more money and possessions. So we're still running on the reward motivation, and that's where we are now. While we're all at this exhibition today, we stand on the cusp of a huge leap forward technologically. We've got the beginnings of quantum computers, artificial intelligence, cyborg and nanotechnology. It's just round the corner. And one thing that I predict is that the reward motivation alone will not help us continue succeeding. This is where you need the change motivation, which I'll explain a bit further. With the change motivation, once you get your mindset shifted slightly, you will earn success. And you will still make money and profit, so you'll still get the reward, but you'll be in a better position in order to exploit what's coming around the corner at us. And so, what are the steps? Once you've got this understanding, you understand the history of what our motivation has been, the next step has to be, okay, how do I start changing the way I'm looking at what I'm doing? The first thing you've got to do is you've got to welcome change. You have to think to yourself every single morning, I've woken up today, I know things are going to change. The very next step, once you have begun to welcome change, is embracing change. This is so important. You have to the very marrow of your being, very inside of you, you have to look forward to change. You have to look for it. You have to seek it. You have to deliberately go out and find it. And if you ever get to that stage where things are bumbling along quite nicely and you think, oh, I'm into plain sailing here, that's exactly when anyone with a change motivation, and I do it, I go out and I create change. I'll just do it to stir everything up and just see what comes out of the woodwork. And it's through creating change yourself, that's when opportunities pop up. But the difference is, rather than your reward motivation driving you, because you've got this change motivation mindset, you'll then quickly spot the opportunities that are popping up. And when you can do that, you can grab them for your own benefit. And this does put you ahead of your competitors. It helped me after the train crash. The change motivation helped me with my personal recovery. I very quickly realised I can't change what had happened to me. I had the injuries I had, but it proved a fertile learning ground for me to then think, okay, how do I need to change and adapt my life to fit in with my new circumstances? It also helped me when it came down to when we found out why the train crash had happened. Turned out the UK government and the rail industry have been complacent and complicit in playing around with passengers' lives. They've put our lives at risk on that day. And with the change motivation, that's what drove me for the next 5 years to apply pressure on the government and the industry and campaign for greater rail safety. We now have the safest railway network in Europe. And it was a change motivation that kept me going and persisting. You have to forgive me because the burning in my throat sometimes dries me out of it. The change motivation also came to my aid when all that had finished and I was sat there going, now what do I do? The change motivation helped me rebuild my life. And I was able to develop this new lifestyle I've got now. And okay, it doesn't follow conventional pathways. I tend to do 4 or 5 things all at the same time. But again, I'm considered a success. I'm earning money again. I've got a comfortable lifestyle, not to the same reward style, but most importantly, I'm having fun. I'm having fun while I'm doing it. And I genuinely wake up each morning excited about what today's going to bring. I'm never 100% sure what it's going to bring, but I just know it's going to be exciting. And because of that change in attitude, that shift in my mindset, it means I'm not surprised when things do shift around me. When they do, I quickly adapt because I'm already half expecting it. And that is the big difference. If you decide to yourself, okay, I like this idea, it doesn't sound too much of a major thing to undertake, that's good. But that's when you're going to have to use something I term my check and rebalancing. When you're doing anything new, in order to make it a habit, you need to keep practicing it. And sometimes when we do something new, we tend to find that as daily life gets back into routine and we're going to work and we're still carrying on, we tend to drop away from what we intended to do. And this is where the check and rebalancing needs to come in. Just think to yourself, when was the last time you said, actually, I need to get more exercise, so I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week? Or you might have said to yourself, I don't have time to read, I'm going to make time and read a book regularly. And then, as I said, as daily life grinds in, your routines kick in, your kids are clamouring at you, gradually your trips to the gym lessen, or the number of books you're reading get fewer, until they eventually drop away. And that's where you need this check and rebalance. When you're changing something as fundamental as your motivation, you need to every single day sit down and think, am I understanding what I'm trying to do here? Am I accepting the fact change is going to happen? And if I do, am I embracing it? And am I embracing it with joy? And if you're not, then that's when you need to check, rebalance so that you do. And the good news is, the more often you do it, I think it's 12 times you have to repeat something, it then becomes habit. And therefore, you won't have to stop and think and keep doing the checks and balancing. The change motivation will have become your new default. What I'm advocating here is subtle. I understand that. It's a subtle shift in mindset, but it is the beginning to opening up a whole new vista of approaching your work. And when you do open up like that and change your thinking, that's what puts you one step ahead of your competitors. Trust me, I've been using it now for 18 years, and it does put you ahead of your competitors. By adopting a change motivation, because you're welcoming it, you're striding through, not being the slightest bit fazed by anything. Your competitors, because they've still got this reward motivation idea, just that money and profit, they're not ready. Therefore, when a change hits them, they're more likely to be disheartened and disillusioned, and even get to the stage where they give up completely. But there's you striding on, and you're spotting the opportunities before they do, which means you're then acting on those opportunities before they do. So you can see that the shift can be subtle, but it is powerful. So what I'm advocating here is understand what your motivation is. So understand where you're coming from now, and then make a conscious decision to change into the change motivation. Then welcome it, accept it. Change is going to happen, and it's not going to go away. It's going to keep happening to the human race for as long as we continue to exist. So you may as well accept it. It's the intelligent thing to do. And then finally, embrace it. Actually fall in love with change. And believe me, that makes a huge difference to your outlook and what you're doing, and the working out what you're going to do next. So above all else, enjoy yourself and enjoy your new motivation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. What a remarkable lady.